Hello, and welcome to my International Business Law presentation. My name is Sean Fernandez Pedra, and today we'll be covering Nissan Motor MFG Corporation versus United States. To start off, we'll be looking at the facts of the case. Nissan Motor MFG Corporation has an assembly plant that is an established foreign trade zone subzone located in Smyrna, Tennessee. Nissan imported machinery from Japan to their assembly plant. This machinery had to be assembled, installed, and tested. If the machinery failed to meet the requirements of the test, they would be returned to the foreign manufacturer, replaced, redesigned, or scrapped. The United States Customs Service ruled that the machinery was liable to customs or other duties since the machinery imported into Nissan subzone is not classified as merchandise according to the Foreign Trade Zone Act. Even so, Customs has deferred the duties until after the machinery has been completely installed and used in full-scale production. Nissan filed an appeal to the case, claiming that the article brought into a foreign trade zone cannot be subjected to duty unless or until it has been sent into the customs territory of the United States. They rely upon the case of Hawaiian Independent Refinery versus United States to support their argument. This appeal was held in the United States Court of Appeals in the year 1989. Moving on to the conceptual framework and the problem. So Nissan Motor MFG Corporation imported machinery to their assembly plant, which is also a free trade zone subzone, without paying duties. The United States Customs Service ruled that the imported machinery is dutiable. Nissan filed an appeal against this decision but was denied since the defendant states that the import is dutiable when dealing with imports that will be used in production in a free trade zone subzone. The legal question of the case, then, is whether the machinery Nissan imported into their free trade subzone should be subjected to duties or not. The important legal aspects that you need to know for this case are the Foreign Trade Zone Act, which allows the establishment of foreign trade zones within the United States. The board that administers this act has the authority to grant corporations the privilege of establishing, operating, and maintaining foreign trade zones. Merchandise may be brought into foreign trade zone for the purposes set forth in the statute without being subject to the customs law of the U.S. Another important legal aspect is United States Code 19, which states that goods may be exempt from custom duties if they are brought into a free trade zone subzone for the purpose of being stored, sold, exhibited, broken up, repacked, assembled, distributed, sorted, graded, cleaned, mixed with foreign or domestic merchandise, or otherwise manipulated or manufactured. Imported equipment is not exempt when installed, used, operated, or consumed, which are the operations performed by the Nissan in the free trade zone subzone. Now, finally, moving on to the reasoning and solution of the case. So the plaintiff, Nissan MFG Motor Corporation, state that they believe customs could not properly impose duties on the equipment since a foreign trade zone is considered outside customs territory of U.S. They further argue that the merchandise entered into a zone does not become subject to duties until after it has been sent into customs territory of the United States. Therefore, they filed for an appeal to the ruling. The defendant, United States Customs Service, decided that the imported machinery is dutiable as they do not meet the requirements listed in the Free Trade Zone Act to be eligible for tax exemption. This is because Nissan was using said machinery to produce motor vehicles. In conclusion, the court ruled that Nissan is to pay the duties on the imported machinery. The ruling was carried out by the Court of International Trade, and they utilized the Foreign Trade Zone Act, which highlights the requirements for tax exemption. Since Nissan was using the imported machinery to produce cars, it therefore falls under the categories of being either installed, used, operated, or consumed, which are not eligible activities for tax exemption. Furthermore, the U.S. government emphasizes that the Foreign Trade Zones Act does not allow the use of an FT or foreign trade zone to avoid payment of duties on production equipment used within the foreign trade zone. Additionally, the court classified the imported machinery under equipment instead of merchandise because of how the machinery was being utilized within the free trade zone. The plaintiff tried to use the Hawaiian Independent Refinery versus United States case to strengthen their argument. But this case became irrelevant as the merchandise there was involved was crude oil, and the court determined that the oil was a constructive entry into the customs territory and therefore was exempt from duties. This is in contrast to the equipment imported by Nissan, as there were no constructive entries to be noted, and therefore they decided that this case is irrelevant to this current case. Even so, as mentioned before, customs have still deferred the duties until after the machinery is used and in full-scale production. So in conclusion, the Court of International Trade was correct in ruling that the machinery imported by Nissan was not exempt from duties since it does not meet the requirements listed in the Foreign Trade Zone Act. Thank you for taking the time to listen to this presentation, and I hope it was enjoyable.